There were lots of opinions, and there were lots of discussions, and there were lots of contradictions somehow in defining science fiction. So in the meantime, while I was talking, I'm also asking you to think about your own personal definitions of science fiction. Because it also happened to me, for example, sometimes my friend asked me about some suggestion, like they asked me to recommend some movies or novels, and I recommended some of my favorite novels or movies. And then they told me that, oh, it's not really science fiction, but like I was surprised by the reaction. So for me, some works were obviously science fiction, but not many people have the same perspective of science fiction. So for that, I think it's also useful to go through the definitions. So the first dictionary definition is by Oxford: imaginative fiction based on postulated scientific discoveries or spectacular environmental changes, frequently set in the future or on other planets involving space or time travel. So this captures many topics of science fiction. Of course, in science fiction, we have time travel, we have space and so on, but there are also a few or many science fiction works which don't have time travel, which don't have space or robots or AI. So for that reason, when someone who is not familiar with science fiction does not see these type of elements in a science fiction work, so they might also think that, oh, this is not really science fiction, or this is kind of soft science fiction. So, but still, this definition covers many of the themes of science fiction, in my opinion. And then there are three main definitions by three scholars of science fiction. And the first one comes from Turan. So he says, and science fiction is a literary genre whose necessary conditions are the presence and interaction of estrangement and cognition, and whose main device is an imaginative framework alternative to the author's empirical environment. So we have an important term here, estrangement, so which also catalyzes the alienation of the author from the real world, and with this definition, and there is a new empirical environment that the author constructs. So for Suin, essentially, estrangement and cognition are essential features of science fiction. So then we have another mainly cited definition by Broderick. So he says it is a species of storytelling native to culture undergoing epistemic changes implicated in the rise and supersession of technical industrial modes of production, distribution, consumption, and disposal. So as you can sense by the term industrial mode of production, so this definition is more sociological, and it's more kind of Marxist analysis. So in this definition, science fiction reflects the social changes of society that is caused by technological developments, that is caused by industrialization or machinery in work environment. Okay, so then we have the third definition, and which I find more comprehensive in my opinion. So Shaw says, fiction that offers us a world clearly and radically discontinuous from the one we know, yet returns to confront that known world in some cognitive way. So this definition does not require some specific elements. So there just needs to be some comparison between the fictional world and the real world. So it basically makes us question our world, and it makes us question the reflection of scientific development to our way of life. Okay, so these are main definitions, and then we also have some open-ended definitions of science fiction. For example, Samuel Delany, who is an African-American science fiction author, says that science fiction is a reading strategy. So it depends on how you read, how you compare, how you contrast. And for Spinrad, science fiction is anything published as science fiction. So this is one of the most open-ended definitions of this genre. And for James, also, science fiction is what is marketed as science fiction. Of course, like science fiction is also a genre. So when we think of it as a genre, we also have the effects of marketing, fan base, and commercialization of the genre as well. So, and these are some open-ended, let's say, definitions of genre. And then the list can go on. So there are many and countless definitions of science fiction. So this is, and one of the articles, and then the article was turned into a book by John Reader. And in the article, and he argues that it's not possible and necessary to define science fiction. So in this book and in his article, John Reader avoids making definitions of science fiction because he believes that science fiction, like any other genre, cannot entirely be defined. So instead of making a definition, he makes 5 propositions about science fiction, so which might also be attributed to all genres. So briefly for his 5 propositions on science fiction. So first he says that science fiction is historical and mutable. So what he means is that when you make a definition, the definition becomes outdated once you make it, because science fiction in 1960s was different, science fiction in 1980s was different, and contemporary science fiction is different from science fiction of the past. So for that reason, it is useless to make a definition because it continuously evolves. This is one of his 5 propositions. And then secondly, Reader proposes that sci-fi has no essence, no single unifying characteristic, and no point of origin. So he also argues that it is not useful to state that science fiction started with this work, science fiction started with this author, because it might have started multiple times through repetition. So for that reason, it has no origin. And for that reason, it's not really possible to define it, in his opinion. And then he also suggests that sci-fi is not a set of texts, but rather a way of using texts and drawing relationships among them. So in the genre of science fiction, there are countless novels and movies, and within the genre, and these works of science fiction also interact with each other. They also make references to each other. So rather than defining what science fiction is, how those works are interacting also matters. So he proposes that. And similarly, he proposes that sci-fi's identity is differentially articulated position in a historical and mutable field of genres. So he also believes that all genres, apart from science fiction, also interact with each other, and genres also interact within. So for that reason, it's not really possible to make a static definition. And finally, he makes reference to fan base and sci-fi communities, and he proposes that attribution of the identity of science fiction to text constitutes an active intervention in its distribution and reception. So it is similar to the other open-ended definitions. So here he proposes that fan base and marketing also plays a big role. So if a work is marketed as sci-fi, probably the readers or the consumers will consider it that way. Okay, so for that reason, he does not make a specific definition, and also, in my opinion, it's also depends on you, like what you expect or from science fiction if you want to make a definition. But for example, if someone asks my opinion, so I thought of it today, so I will define science fiction that way. So works that construct fictional universes in order to speculate on the direct or indirect consequences of scientific developments for individuals and society. So for that reason, I think in science fiction, science might be directly used or indirectly used, or it can also be about the reflection of or a chain reaction of events that are initiated by science or scientific developments. So personally, for example, I will not expect aliens or like space or time travel to be strictly present in a work of science fiction in order to call it science fiction. Okay, so that is all my presentation, and thank you for listening. And then
and then you disappear, never to be heard again. And you just made your own definition and disappeared from the. Who are you going to coach? Oh, where did people go? Everybody just left. Oh. Firuze, you're here? No, Firuze disappeared. Okay, Izmir. Something happened in Izmir. Oh my God. Izmir. Okay, man. Oh yeah, they're back. Good. Wait. We're not hearing you.
That was a grand,
yeah. I was trying to stop share. I left the call. Sorry.
Yeah, but Turan and Firuze disappeared at the same moment. So for a second,
Really?
I thought that Izmir is gone. Something happened.
I'm sorry. I accidentally closed the whole page.
Okay.
Yeah, me too. But at the same time.
Okay, Turan, thank you very much. That's a very interesting one. You started with the most academically viable ones to move to your own version. That's good because I've been myself. Well, let me just actually share a document with you, and also share it so people can just download it. People who've taken my science fiction course should have it because I just shared during my courses. But okay, here is the Google Drive text. Maybe I can just show it to you or briefly. Here I come. Maybe you can see now.
Yes.
Can you? Okay. No, I should see too. So this is a list of definitions. Some especially some are funny. Darko Suvins is here. Some of the definitions of science fiction are actually, academic and scholarly. For example, if you start talking about them, even people in the know suddenly get what was estrangement, what is epistemology. So that you just some of the definitions we give are very laden with words, heavy words, which you need to wait a second. Let me just digest them one after one. So some of them are very easygoing. For example, where is it? Potter's Twice is very interesting. I can't define it, but I know it when I see it. So that's actually a quote about pornography. So actually, there was another funny anecdote about American Supreme Court when they were trying to define the term obscene. So obscene material is forbidden, but what is obscene? Where does it start? Where does it end? How do you define somebody's, displaying their body in an obscene way or just normal way? So and the Supreme Court, one of the Supreme Court judges say that, I know it and I see it. So I think it's also repeated in other kind of things, in pornography. And I think it comes to somebody's own very subjective acceptance of, okay, for example, Bülent Akkoç, I'm a member of science fiction story competition jury team. So every year we come together. Maybe you know that Türk Bilişim Dergisi, Bilim Kurgu Öykü Yarışması. Bülent Akkoç was there, but his approach was very, very strict. So he would just read certain stories and he would totally eliminate them. That's not science fiction. While we others were trying to also find like them, kind of use a kind of more flexible approach, he would totally deny. He was a very kind of, some people's attitude is like that. That's not science fiction. That's not science fiction. Totally. And but whereas others, we had this problem when we were working on that Turkish volume on Bilim Kurgu'yu anlamak. Some people submitted certain kind of works which I was not very aware of, which talk about life after death or such things, which I find myself, have trouble understanding whether such issues got into really religious and metaphysical issues, where to draw the line. There is also things like Scientology, which have their own science fiction works. There is religious science fiction. So some people have very clearly drawn lines. Others are just kind of, whatever we call science fiction is science fiction. Whatever is made under the title of science fiction. So there are two ends, I think, what I see is, on the one hand, if people look at and call it science fiction, then it in some ways science fiction. And some other people say, no, for something to be called science fiction, there must be a criteria, very rigid. I mean, we can totally determine whether something is science fiction or not. Like we are detecting some existence of a virus, like it has a DNA code, so we can determine it. Okay, so I'm just sharing this with you so people can. Most of these terms are actually exclusive, that they don't overlap. Most, but some actually totally, pushed others out. That is, but I think one of the key terms here is I found the 5 criteria that you shared was kind of probably because they did not have the term science specifically, maybe in one of them, but not in the first. I didn't see it. So it means these criteria also apply to other genres. So
Exactly.
they're not totally not. They're very broad. For example, look at Amit Goswami. Science fiction is that class of fiction which contains the currents of change in science and society. So I think the currents, I think if you just try to boil down, that this is a very important word. Change must be there and science must be there. So there must be some mentioning of science and change. So I think changes brought by science, directly, indirectly, as you mentioned. I think these are the essence. There must be something science, but what is science is a different discussion, and there must be some sort of a change, because science fiction emerged with scientific changes. What if? So there's one very easy way to define it. What if literature? With a scientific change? What if we could just transport our mentality, our consciousness to a machine, or what if we can just time travel? What if we could? So what if man could just give birth? So there should be some change, which is created by science. I think this is the essence of it, and this should be there in some way. That's for example, Vestal. Vestal has had a robot. Archie had a robot too. One was male, one was female. And when you look at that, hey, Vestal used a science fiction approach in their commercials because there is a robot. But whether this is a science fiction or some sort of commercial image which is added to give us some different view, whether there is a kind of change, okay, there is the robot. I myself am trying to define and have developed my own way, but I'm not going to share it at this moment because I haven't finalized it. It's a 2-level definition. I think science fiction, I'll just say this and stop. Science fiction can be defined on the one level, the thematic level. Whatever literature, whatever text which has these elements, these themes, is science fiction. But at the same time, there's a deeper formula layer in which we have to say there must be science and change. If this don't happen, So there is science fiction pornography. Okay, they have all the themes, time travel, logos, but their intention is not to question function of science. They're making a porn film, or they're making a other music video, whatever. Science fiction could be seen, but I think the second layer, this sub-layer, this formula layer, whether this work depicts any kind of challenge brought by scientific change. And so we also have to question that. Some people may also add other criteria, but I think the thing that I'm trying to develop seems to be working for me. But I think I have to just finalize it and share it with other people. Yes, thank you very much again. This is all my 2 cents about that. Let's hear the others. I just shared the documents. Maybe you can just get it from the chat menu. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so is there anyone else who would like to maybe share or define her or his own perspective of science fiction?
Or any question that you don't
Any
understand?
questions?
I want to add a definition to Cem Hoca's list. I'm sure you're familiar, you've heard of him, but this author, István Cicero-Vonay, I really like his definition and categorization of science fiction. I use this one in my science fiction class a lot. And I've just sent you the Google Books link. And on page 2, he says, let me just read it from here. I've quoted it. He says that we no longer treat science fiction as purely a genre engine producing formulaic effects, but rather as a kind of awareness we might call science fictionality, a mode of response that frames and tests experiences as if they were aspects of a work of science fiction. I think this touches a point what you just said, that yes, we see all the themes and it resembles science fiction, but it's sometimes movies or works are not proper science fiction because they lack this the essence of what science fiction is, perhaps, according to you, and I also agree with you on that. Therefore, we can name it, as here Vonay tells, science fictionality, because as we grow up on it, we sometimes just miss that that movie or that work has this certain science fictional elements. We recognize it, it's there, but as as a younger generation, we are already living in it, so sometimes it's not very seeable, visible to us, and therefore we may just call it as, okay, this is a science fiction movie. But when you look at it from yes, and when you look at it from this perspective, I think it becomes more reasonable to differentiate. It has science fictional elements, but maybe not science fiction in the more proper, academic wise, maybe. But we can agree that yes, this one work X or Y, has certain elements that we may call it as science fiction, but not as proper science fiction. I really like his classification, as I said, and he also tells, let me just find it. For example, he says that there are a pair of gaps in science fiction literature, in general science fiction. The first of these is a historical logical form of hesitation. Okay, he says science fiction has 2 forms of hesitations. The first one is historical logical form, and the other one is ethical form. So as my also area focuses on ethics in science fiction, I really enjoy this one because science fiction in general has this ethical questioning in most of the works. What should we do?
What is meant by hesitation at this point?
Yeah, it's about, maybe I can say, more of a questioning or reasoning, perhaps, with hesitation. I can reframe it like that. Here he makes definition in the later pages in 3 and 4. Okay, for example, as for ethical form of hesitation, he mentions the dilemma between the cognitive plausibility of new ideas or technologies used in science fiction and the possible ethical sociocultural outcomes. So what should we do, or what do we do with the new technologies? How these new technologies influence the social and cultural fabric of that particular universe mentioned in the novel. That kind of hesitation or gap, he tells. So maybe you can also check this one out.
Okay.
The introduction part is also enough for covering these definitions.
Yeah, but that reason I just can you see me? Okay. The reason I typed this as a kind of reminder for myself, because I also teach fantasy, and you may be familiar with somebody called Todorov, Sevan Todorov, a Bulgarian theorist. His own definition of fantasy sounds very much like the one you do. He says actually true fantasy, or fantastic rather, but fantastic is a hesitation, that it's a kind of not settled state. That is, in a work, you just like Poe. So that's how he categorizes the element of fantastic. For example, he says if in a work you see the element of fantastic element as a kind of supernatural, that's one kind of fantasy. But if it's a kind of thing which could be explained right in a rational way, just like a hallucination, or mistake, or some sort of subjective perception, or madness. Okay, just like Poe. Most of Poe's works are not actually. They don't have. He doesn't have metaphysical things mostly. Most of his works could be expressed as a kind of the poet or the artist's disturbed state of mind and his own very subjective things. For example, there isn't the dead man who is knocking the walls, and other kind of things. So, and actually, at the end of the work, you make a decision whether there is a sort of element of metaphysics, or it could be rationally explicable. So what he says, the definition you gave, that's why I wanted to ask the meaning of hesitation, whether science fiction has this kind of hesitation. I have to just go and think more about that. But also, that thing that when you use the word mode, this means science fiction is not a genre. The problem stems from the fact that we have trouble defining it, because we try to define it just like a genre. Science fiction is a literature. No, everything could be science fiction. Anything could be science fiction, or maybe everything could be science fictionalized. Take Hamlet, take Romeo and Juliet, take any story, Romeo and Juliet, and add one sentence, just like, and Romeo reached for and turned off the switch of Juliet. So the same work, just by add, and so wait a second, Juliet was a robot, you say. And the whole work changes, but still the same love story, still problem, but suddenly his turning off Juliet or any other kind of thing suddenly makes it, wait a second, all these people are actually living in a different planet, they are robots. And then the total cognitivity changes, total perception changes. And I think in this regard, maybe because you can just pick anything, any work you like, take a kind of detective novel, take a film noir, and just change the place, just like you take a film from 1950s, film noir, take it to some on a different planet or futuristic world. Yeah, Blade Runner, like something. So actually, science fiction is not a genre. Science fiction is, you take a literary work, you science fictionalize it. Actually, you turn it into a detective work novel. It could be a love. We had a very interesting discussion in my class about the film Her, which is, most of you are familiar with that. Her, is it a science fiction work? Is it simply a love story in which you, just like a epistolarian novel, you've never seen the girl that you love with, you're exchanging work. So, of course, you can say, but she's AI. And, wait a second, there is a, non-human element, but it's just that this is just like you look at a love novel, take it, make the girl robot, android, and it's the same novel, but the same impossibility of coming together and all these kind of things, and you just science fictionalize it. That's a different approach. Yeah. And I think it also is a very good explanation of why science fiction should not be defined as a genre. Because if it's a genre, it wouldn't just, that's totally uncontrollable. If it's a genre, there are conventions which you can at least boil down. But in science fiction, you can have time travel, not mental, body transformation or not. It's so broad, so many subgenres that it's almost everything. in science fiction, we have almost everything that makes it very difficult to define. So maybe we have to see it as a kind of mode of writing. You can just pick any work, or any, you can, of course, you can design something from scratch as totally science fiction work. But actually, what science fiction does is doing the literature in a different mode. That's also a take, and I think it's a solid take. I mean, you can just pick any work and say, wait a second, this is actually a love story. This is actually a, existential work. This is actually a crime story, but it's science fictionalized with the additional certainties. So this is also very interesting idea which must be taught. Thank you. Anybody else? Anybody else having any questions?
Yeah. Cem Hocam, I'm thinking of what you just said. I've always seen science fiction as a genre, actually, and tried to make definitions while I was writing the thesis. I also read about the historicist definitions, and what you say also resembles, connotates these historicist definitions as a mode. But I will think about it. I'm still not sure and convinced that we can just call it not a genre, because we recognize it. Doesn't it make it, doesn't it give science fiction a genre-like quality? Because we can recognize it, say that this is science fiction, and therefore have this formalist underpinning because it's recognizable. I also agree that not everything is proper science fiction, and yes, there is this mode of science fictionality, but also I also come to the point that because it's recognizable, I think it also has a genre-like qualities, and therefore at one point some works are, yes, these are science fiction as a genre. Can't we say that?
Yeah. By the way, it's Brian. I just checked whether it was Parender or Aldes who said that it's a mode of writing, but I think Brian W. Aldes, who is a science
Brian
fiction,
Aldiss.
Brian Aldiss, is the person who's saying science fiction is a mode of writing. So there is some somebody right?
There was another.
Yeah, Dicle just raised it. Okay,
Yeah.
Dicle, listen to you.
When you mentioned the genre debate, I was reading a few definitions on my own today as well. I went through the books that I have, and I was reading Ursula K. Le Guin's definition today. And she wrote an introduction to the Norton Ontology of Science Fiction, and she was having a hard time probably trying to put science fiction as a respectable literary genre. Like, she was working really hard to say that against the more modernist highbrow literary canon people. She was trying to explain science fiction is a genre just like realism is. So she was trying to put it in a literary tradition. In that way, maybe we should say it is a genre. But I think after listening to Mehmet Hocam, it also depends on from where you look at it and when you look at it, because science fiction, I think it's properly begins when science began, like almost from Aristotle, when the observation conversation began, then science came up. So we can even take it back to those times. For example, I was thinking about the difference between Broderick's definition and other open-ended definitions. Broderick took it from a Marxist point of view, like you said. It was about changes of technological industrial modes of production, whereas the other, for example, Samuel Delany and other open-ended definitions said it is whatever is marketed or published under the name of science fiction, which is a capitalist definition. So science also has a variety of definitions itself to begin with. That's why it affects the definition of science fiction throughout the ages. Because we can also talk about science and science ethics as well, to begin with, because Aristotle wasn't talking about ethics that much. But right now we talk about ethics because science has now the power to change, to drastically change people's lives. So I think it's a broad way. And it's very dependent upon from where and when you look at it. Also, people usually think about films these days or TV series when they hear the word science fiction. But I'm, for example, I myself more of a book fan. So, so when you also, if you look at it from Damon Knight's point of view, for example, he was saying that whatever I point to is science fiction, because that if you go back to that fan clubs of the 70s and 80s, all that it was really popular by then, and it was very much capitalist. So yeah, I think maybe a classification of science fiction when it was like for example, Francis Bacon's work is also a science fiction. Or if you really go back, even like Cem Hocam said, even really old poems and other works could be science fiction. So yeah.
I have, when I'm teaching this, I have this history of science fiction, all these old works, starting from the earliest works. But it started with the guy who lived in Turkey, in Adıyaman. That was his name. I'm bad with names. Through history, Luciano,
Yes.
which that generally considered to be the earliest work of science fiction, in which he talked about armies coming from the sun and all these. You can call it interplanetary travel. You realize that it's an allegory. He's just making fun of other historians who claim to be just writing Battle of Troy, but then talking about nonsense. He intentionally created nonsense to make fun of them, and so they call it science fiction. So I think some people like Bacon, even Thomas More, their intention was not to actually question changes brought by science. They were writing mostly allegories because they couldn't write their realistic literature. That's why they invented actually utopia. That is saying that this is dream, that it doesn't exist. They were not actually questioning. So they are allegories, and even Gulliver Smith. Jonathan Smith. Gulliver's
Travels.
Those travels. These works are all allegorical. They point to a group of people of their time, society, social criticism. So they were indirect social criticism intentionally placed elsewhere, which was good. Okay, but their intention was not actually to question what if we could go to other polarities, what if we come across different beings with different cognitive levels or cognitive qualities. So, but they happen to write things which more or less they call science fiction. Proper science fiction, together with proper fantasy, is a product of industrial revolution, because in the industrial revolution, change brought by science became precipitous. That is uncontrollably coming. So it's coming, it's here, like it or not. Okay, just like starting from steam machine, telegraph, electricity, and then so things today happening that our cell phones now have AI, so we can just do everything. So we're talking about the next step. That's science fiction. But I think these early people, and that's why I think I'm a bit skeptic about calling these people their works just like micro-megas. I think the real science fiction starts with Mary Shelley and Frankenstein. Everything up to that point is mostly allegorical. Shelley is actually, what if we can take what part from a body, so just like organ transplant, that's the turning point, real turning point. I think, but she was alone. She was lonely. She didn't start a genre. Her work, and also showed something like a novel called Last Man, in which whole population of London disappeared because of a virus. It's just like that. So it's also very interesting. She wrote other kind of what if and science novels. She's a true and maybe early science fiction writer. So I think proper science fiction starts with somewhere around 19th century, because and the real science. So all these, I'm a bit skeptical. I just wanted to say that. Okay. And anybody else would like to say anything? Okay. Maybe I can just find something. We still have time. We're to be as flexible as possible. Oh, by the way, Dijan also said that Ursula Le Guin, we have to, I think one of the greatest contributions of Ursula Le Guin in terms of definition is that, you know, she said, you should know it very well, that science fiction is not predictive. I mean, it's a common thing when people talk about science fiction, generally we talk about whether we're making predictions of science. This is the futuristic or futurological aspect of science fiction, which is not necessary, which is not science fiction is all about. This science fiction is descriptive, she says. So maybe we have to also, so when we look at Frankenstein, we not only think what she's considering, what if this becomes a possible in the future, but we see the worries of her own time. She lived at a certain time, and that work reflects all her anxieties and worries of the time. So Blade Runner reflects, doesn't tell us Los Angeles 2019. Blade Runner tells us the America in early 1980s. Cities are dark, crime infested, acid rain, all the things are getting. And it's a noir detective novel placed elsewhere. So I think you see more 1980s than any other time depicted. I think this is also Le Guin's another. So it's not about future, it's about the time in which it is written. So it makes it maybe closer to it's being a mode. That is, instead of writing a detective novel or instead of writing another, so they just put it into kind of, well, of course, you can say androids or the things are very different, but the same novel could be written in a different way. It should still be a good novel. I think Özgür raises their hand. Yes, Özgür. Özgür, can you hear me? Özgür raised his hand, but
Maybe mic is off. Yes, his mic is off.
His mic is off, but he should be hearing me for us.
It's off again now.
Oh, okay.
It's on now.
Yes, Özgür.
We can't hear you.
Oh,
Yeah,
he's putting.
Okay.
You're protesting our discussion, or you say you're down. Okay, you're laughing. You're laughing at us, or okay. Thank you. Anybody else? Okay, thank you, Özgür. We got that. No worries. Anybody else about? Yeah. Maybe we can move to something else. We can just come back to that point anytime where we just revised our thinking about science fiction. Next time, let's talk about something for future, what we can do next time, or at this time, instead of picking a subject like this, like a more lecture-like thing, maybe we can just pick a work. Somebody will just pick that work, talk about that work, recent work probably, maybe not like Blade Runner, but I've been I postponed it, so now I'm watching Expanse, the series, finding it interesting, but I haven't finished the whole series. There's going to be others that I'm putting. I've been very busy. I just skipped a lot of science fiction series because my accumulation of science fiction is much higher than the rate I consume it. So I'm lagging, but I'm finding interesting things. Maybe I can. But if you think any recent work now is very open, very rich in terms of interpretation, which could be a good discussion point. Let's see. Okay, Dicle, do you have any?
Yes, I have. Today I was watching Pluribus.
Sorry.
I was watching Pluribus today. I don't know how
Pluribus.
I'm sorry if my pronunciation could be bad. I don't know how it sounds, but from Vince Gilligan's new show.
Pluribus, yeah.
Pluribus, yeah.
Okay.
That could be questionable whether it is science fiction or not, or what.
that could be a very good point of discussion. Maybe would you like to initiate the discussion?
Now? Okay.
No,
Okay.
no, not now. Start next time. 2
Okay.
weeks later. Okay. I mean,
Okay.
maybe you finish, but it's still on. How many?
It is still on as only the third episode. I saw it today. I think it's
By the way,
going up.
Dicle, as you said, it's discussable, but IMDb calls it a dystopian sci-fi and
Yeah.
drama or so it's called a sci-fi and it's sci-fi.
Yeah. I felt it.
Okay. Why don't we do something like that? Dicle, you're the initiator. Okay, we're not going to have any moderator. Let's call it initiator from this point on. You bring pluribus, your own 3 episodes, 4 episodes, however. Okay, Özgür, no problem. So you use it to initiate and just put an argument that this is science fiction or not. What is the science fictionality? And we have our own takes. We can bring other works in mind. And at the end of this, I think we'll have our own list. I should just watch the pluribus, but I can just bring any other work. Keep this in mind.
Like, are we going to talk about Pluribus, the show, explicitly, or like?
No, use it as, yeah, I mean, if this is a kind of, some people say this is not science fiction, it's science fiction. Tell us what's been happening. I think there's nobody else who has watched it so far. Is there somebody who's watching it? No, very good. So we'll just have your own expert review, and it's science fictionality, and I'll be talking about a few other films, which just like Another Earth, which I think will be related, so at the end of this, I think we'll have a very good list of things which we can just use for our discussions or for thesis. There are young academics, there are people who are looking for works to deal with. Maybe we can add some work about this point.
Okay.
Do you think you can do that? Huh?
Yes, I can.
So it's just like not very, just bringing us some scenes or some subjects, what's all about and what's happening. So maybe we can just join you in watching that series.
Okay.
So, Firuze, would that be okay? If we'll have this next time?
Yes, of course.
Okay. When is
I'm very okay
going to be?
with them.
When is going to be? When do you think? Next week or the following?
Hocam, I will check the application form. If you remember, we asked
Yes.
how often, do you want? And I think once a month is taking the poll.
Once a month they want. Okay.
Once a month, yes. I will check that. I'm just waiting more responses.
Okay. Good.
And then we can discuss about it. I will also create the WhatsApp group within this week.
Yes,
so
that would be.
I'm just waiting more numbers.
Yeah.
And then we can check and ask the members as well. But I think once a month seems optimal at this point. But let's wait and see the results.
Okay, so maybe we'll within a week or so, by the end of next week, we'll have a more determined number of people and a WhatsApp group, so we can just have more immediate discussion. I just wanted to. Okay, this is we have something like a month or 3 weeks to go.
It's okay. It could be even next week. I mean, it's a new show, and I can read as much as I can.
Yeah. No. You have time. Maybe add a few more episodes. Is it weekly?
It is weekly. It's on Fridays.
So the more will accumulate. There will be more things for you to just. Okay. But,
okay.
We can do it anytime. That's yours, kind of, because you initiated that. But if there are other people, Aybüke, İlayda, Özgür, Aylin, would like to, hey, I can do. There's a series there's a novel that I'm reading. There's an interesting subject to that.
I remember İlayda.
Sorry?
I remember İlayda from.
Yeah. Okay, so feel free to make offers. Okay, so we'll be listening to you. I think Cli-Fi. Okay, Cli-Fi is very into Özgür. Make a suggestion. It's a few sentences long proposal thing. I would like to talk about this work in terms of this. Okay, here we go. And Cli-Fi. Just think about
maybe
it.
Cem Hocam, we can do something like this after the WhatsApp group. People can write, as you said, proposals, and then we can just make a list who is going to initiate the discussion in which week, and then we can have a list so that everyone would know when they're going to, work for it. And I think maybe that timeline would work better.
Okay. I think, Firuze, will you be able
Yeah.
to do this kind of organization? You're the
Yeah,
as
yeah,
as
sure. Like,
the proposals
yeah.
come to you, just you try to
Yes.
send them. We'll have, if you like, we can have another
You can
meeting.
you can send me an email, or we can discuss it in the WhatsApp group, and I
Okay.
will just make a list of it. It's fine. Yeah,
Okay,
I can.
good, thank you. Yes, so there'll be time for other people to think and make offers, make proposals. We'll just join. So now and then we can also do something like I'm not going to say more academic, but just like what Mehmet Turan did, some subject about. I can just do something about cyberpunk. It is single discussion about cyberpunk, what it is post cyberpunk, and what's happening. Kind of a fast presented, nothing more than 10 to 15 slides. Okay, half 20 minutes long, so that it will initiate a discussion, and people will just have their own. People can bring their own ideas. Okay. So maybe we can just do something like what that is what I'm going to do. We can just distribute it into the future discussions. So we already have two, if you like, Firuze, to go with. If you like to do anything.
Me?
Sorry, I just turned off my mic. If you like to yourself, hey, there's this thing I want to do. I want to talk about my thesis, or I want to talk about that work in any way, in any form. Add yours too.
Hocam, sorry, I missed the point you're saying to me.
If you also have
Okay.
anything in mind to
Yes,
just
I
like a
have.
subject, your own thesis, your own dissertation.
I have a lot of things in mind. Yes, yeah, I have.
Just like with ethics, we talked about that. Ethics
Yes.
or something. Maybe you can feel free to just put yourself in any way.
I've been thinking about this short story of Le Guin, the ones walking from Omelas. Maybe
the ones who walk away from
Omelas. Yeah, I was thinking of that. Maybe we can talk about it because it's brief and everyone can read it, in one breath.
Yeah.
So maybe we can do that after Dicle, or if anyone else wants to do, I can always work
just
for it.
See what's happening. Add yourself to it.
I can just
look at this schedule and see what people are doing. And if there are gaps, Cemal, can you do something? Turan, can you do something? We can always
exactly. I was just waiting for that to see what other people who want to talk about, and in gaps in the 3 weeks, I can just talk about anything you want. I have a lot of things in mind. There are a lot of books that we discuss in class. So
okay, so we're waiting from you. We're getting news from you. Maybe you'll just get WhatsApp group other people's put things, and there will be maybe first as time, or I can be the next. But let's just. I just want to. The reason I picked this is that because she said something. It could be more practical instead of just like a more academic subject. But anyway, we'll always just find a balance between the informal and the formal.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sure.
Is it okay for today? Firuze, do you have anything to add?
Sorry?
Is it okay?
Not really. I think it's okay.
Turan, do you have anything to add yourself?
No. So I can also, as you said, I can fill the gaps and do something and make presentations. So I'm also waiting for the group.
Okay. So I think it's going to be a good series for this year, and
we'll find a way. I'm very excited about it.
We'll find a way to make it better. So others people just see, even if you just want to, we watch a film, suddenly something snaps. Hey, this could be very interesting. Let me just share this at the discussion group. So we'll be very open. Don't feel like we're overwhelming the group. We're kind of pushing too serious ideas. Very practical, very informal ideas are also welcome. Okay.
In Netflix, there's just this new adaptation of Frankenstein. I think Delta, maybe we can also talk about it in one session.
Yeah, and there is also by Cenk Tan and Defne Tutan a call for a
I've seen that
of chapters. They just want to. They're editing a book about adaptations of Frankenstein, which I'm planning to write a chapter, but Turkish adaptations. And there is a neat series called Yaratılan, which I haven't, but there's on Yes, Yaratılan.
I
It's Turkish,
haven't heard of it. No.
Turkish adaptation of Frankenstein, and yes, on Netflix. Thank you, Layla. And but okay, apart from, I have to just go back and watch. I haven't watched this myself, but there is also 1980s Kavanoz'daki Adam, which is a 4 series of TRT, short series, Kavanoz'daki Adam, but which is not exactly Frankenstein, but very much Frankenstein's subject. A man who is an intellectual has the brain transplanted to him of another very amele, and so it's a very cultural criticism that is the man who is an artist's wife, but suddenly he develops very Anatolian hardcore mentality of, but there's a very good deal of conservative criticism of Turkey. Yes, yes, Özgür, you know that word. Which is Frankenstein-esque. I'm sure there could be. Anyway, so maybe I can share these ideas with you. So Frankenstein is popular, and I just wanted to remind that there is a book open for call for papers. They are inviting people for Frankenstein adaptations. But the point is, bilmiyorum biliyor musun Firuze, but more recently this docent, which I don't care, which is good, they dropped the giving points to book chapters.
Yes,
so book chapter does not work anymore. So if you're writing a book chapter, it won't be any good. So you have to write a book.
It's 2 points or something like that, Hocam.
Actually, I don't care. I don't care. But as long as you're going to do something, this will distract people from writing chapters. So no longer book chapters, because people will be either writing articles or books, dedicated books themselves. So books, collections, edited books will no longer be very popular, or something like that.
At this point, I think perhaps special issues in journals with Teredizin would work better for docentic criteria.
Or Archie kind of thing will be more important. I just heard that the book chapters, somebody said, stop writing book chapters. Don't. They're no longer desirable. Just write. And if for Hacettepe, that the book, they don't give any points for book chapters.
Really? In Ege, it's still high. In here, it's still, it gives good points for book chapters.
So I think maybe for Hacettepe thing, but I think there's a general trend of people, universities are, driving people towards high status things. Hey, just don't come together and write a book. No, just do something internationally more visible, which is you submit your work to high status journals or give me more points. So I'll give you the things. So and I think in Hacettepe it's going to be more difficult. But I think it's going to be repeated elsewhere. So because the directors are all, ripping us for all this kind of points, etc.
I am not sure if you checked our criteria, but it's getting harder and harder for us.
So people who are now professors, I know at least 2 people who retired and wanted to switch to a private university, and when they see that they have nothing, they can't even be with their with their CVs, they can't even be a doctor öğretim üyesi now. They have nothing. So and what is bad, these people are actually in your juries and committees there, but they themselves have their publications, their works, the things that they've done amount to nothing. They're not employed. They just one of them was actually traumatized. I heard
academic existential crisis, perhaps.
No, she's a professor, expecting that when she retires, she'll switch to a private university. When they just looked at her, they told you, in effect, I'm sorry, you're nothing, because we're not interested in you. So, even if you're a professor, your CV with the new criteria means nothing. So, this should be a sign for people, especially preparing themselves for. Anyway, this started with a kind of book chapter. I myself will have 2 book projects for future. One is about history, and one is about science fiction. So some book projects, more than 2 actually. But we're going to, after all this thing, we'll just kind of be very, very whether we should just continue or turn our interest towards elsewhere, because people will not be submitting People will not be submitting their work to collect it.
Hocam, it doesn't have to be just in Turkey. In this book collection I did, there are a lot of foreign authors, and it counts for them. Not maybe for us, but it counts for them. So
that's why that I'm planning to do something more internationally about
international one would work better
for others by others, kind of a thing, which would attract. But the point is, okay, there's going to be one actually international, so I'll just work on that. But there was another one for Turkey about Turkish and America. People may not be as willing, so we just sit and talk. Okay, so anyway, so that's the case. Others, maybe our Hacettepe is hard. It's getting harder, stupidly harder. There is constant raising the stakes and making it difficult people to come here. Or if you're at the beginning of your career, that's okay, But the moment you're just at so you're preparing for something that suddenly they tell you that's not going to work, and it's kind of disturbing.
I experienced it like 2 or 3 years ago. I'm not sure. I was ready. I was expecting my title, and they just changed it in mid-year.
They just there are many such stories. People very much ready for things, but within a year they just change criteria in such a way that it becomes impossible to do it within a year or so. And people have to just sometimes quit and go elsewhere because they won't be able to. It's just like a catch-22, constantly raising the stakes in a kind of absurd way.
A friend of mine made this resemblance. You're like Mario, he said. You're always collecting things and trying to get to the princess, but you all the time fail.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, the point is, I myself stopped investing in academia some years ago, which is bad. I sometimes regret, but not much, because I said I'm going to do elsewhere. I have 25 presentations, each is an article submitted nowhere. So I just go crazy and start submitting them. I can just make publications, 10 publications a year, because I have them. I'm not doing that. I don't know what I'm going to do, but so anyway, so this is for those young people to keep in mind. Submitting works for I think if Hacettepe does it, if you others do that, but this may give the Ege people, Ege rector, why are we doing that? Their points getting higher internationally, Hacettepe. So tomorrow suddenly they just change the criteria for other universities as well, because at private universities they're already kind of doing things. But anyway, we just have to work. We're just trying to make JAST and other things for more visible. So hopefully, okay. That's all for today. Anything else you want to add? Anybody? So we more or less have a format going on. Somebody initiating discussion, kind of that sets a center around which we revolve, but move around, come back to the center, and some free time to talk about things like that as a group. Okay, thank you, Firuze.
Thank you, Hocam. Thank you, Mehmet.
Thank you.
Anything to say?
Okay. At this point, for me, no. We will just wait and see about the WhatsApp group, and then we can discuss with Dicle on our next session. And we will also watch the series by that time. And I think it will work out well. After a few sessions, we are going to get it going really nice.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Goodbye, everybody. Good evening.
Okay.
See you next time. Stay in
See you.
science fiction.
Right.